In the heart of Mumbai, where the streets buzzed with life and chaos, there lived a man named Arjun Mehta. He was no ordinary man. He was one of India's youngest self-made millionaires. His rise to success had been nothing short of extraordinary. Starting from humble beginnings, he built his empire in the tech world through sheer grit and determination. But despite all his wealth and achievements, Arjun carried a burden that weighed heavier than any riches could ever lift. 2 years ago, tragedy struck when Arjun's only son, Rohan, met with a devastating car accident. The crash left Rohan paralyzed from the waist down. For months, Arjun poured every penny he had into treatments, flying to the best hospitals across the globe, consulting renowned specialists, and trying experimental therapies. Yet, no matter how hard he tried, nothing worked. No doctor could promise him that his son would walk again. The once vibrant Rohan, who dreamed of becoming a football star, now spent most of his days confined to a wheelchair. His laughter faded, replaced by silence. His eyes, once full of curiosity and hope, turned dull with despair. Watching his son like this broke Arjun's heart. Every day felt like a battle against guilt, helplessness, and anger at fate for taking away what mattered most to him. Arjun became a shadow of himself. Once proud and confident, he now avoided public appearances. He hated being recognized because it reminded him of everything he'd lost. People still whispered about him, the millionaire who seemed to have it all but couldn't save his own child. Those whispers stung more than anything else. So Arjun chose solitude, staying away from prying eyes and keeping himself busy with work that no longer brought him joy. One afternoon, as the sun blazed overhead, Arjun decided to step out for some fresh air. Walking aimlessly through the crowded market, he let the noise drown his thoughts. Vendors shouted their prices, rickshaw drivers honked impatiently, and children ran around laughing. Amidst the commotion, Arjun tried to lose himself, hoping to escape the heaviness inside him, even if just for a little while. As he passed by an old temple tucked away in a quiet corner of the street, something caught his attention. A soft voice called out to him, "Sir, please wait." Arjun stopped dead in his tracks. Turning slowly, he saw a young girl sitting on the pavement. She looked frail, her clothes worn and patched, but her eyes held a strange intensity that made him pause. "Sir," she said again, her voice steady despite her small frame. Her hand reached out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "I can make your son walk again." For a moment, Arjun froze. His mind raced. How did this girl know about Rohan? Who was she? Was this some kind of trick? Part of him wanted to brush her off and keep walking, but another part, a desperate, hopeful part, held him back. Before he could say anything, the girl continued, her tone calm yet urgent. "You have until tomorrow evening. Come back here if you want answers." Then, without waiting for a reply, she released his wrist and disappeared into the bustling crowd. Arjun stood there stunned. His heart pounded in his chest. What had just happened? Was this real, or was he imagining things? He glanced around, searching for the girl, but she was nowhere to be seen. All he could hear was the hum of the city around him, oblivious to the storm brewing in his mind. That night, Arjun lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He replayed the encounter over and over in his head. The girl's words echoed in his ears. "I can make your son walk again." It sounded impossible, almost laughable, and yet, deep down, a flicker of hope burned within him. After 2 long years of disappointment, could this be the miracle he'd been praying for? But doubt crept in too. Could he really trust a beggar girl he barely knew? What if this was a scam? What if she was playing on his desperation? Still, the thought of doing nothing gnawed at him. If there was even the slightest chance, if this girl truly had something to offer, how could he ignore it? By morning, Arjun had made up his mind. Whether it was desperation or faith driving him, he didn't know. But one thing was certain. He needed answers. So, the next evening, he found himself standing outside the same temple, scanning the area for the mysterious girl. Time ticked by, and just as he began to think maybe she wouldn't show, she appeared from behind a vendor's cart, holding a small wooden box. "I knew you'd come," she said simply, her voice carrying a confidence that belied her age. Opening the box, she revealed a collection of herbs and powders. "What I offer isn't medicine, it's faith, but first you must trust me completely." Arjun hesitated. This whole situation felt surreal. A beggar girl claiming to heal his son? It sounded absurd. Yet looking into her piercing eyes, he felt something, an unexplainable pull. Slowly he nodded. "Tell me what to do." And so began a journey neither of them could have anticipated. Little did Arjun know that this decision would change not only his son's life, but his own as well. The next evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Arjun stood outside the old temple once again. His mind was a whirlpool of emotions: hope battling with skepticism, desperation wrestling with doubt. He scanned the crowd for the girl who had promised him answers, half expecting her not to show up. But then, just as the streetlights flickered on, she emerged from behind a fruit vendor's cart. Her presence was quiet but commanding. She carried herself with an air of calm certainty that seemed unusual for someone so young. In her hands, she held the same small wooden box he'd seen the day before. Without hesitation, she walked straight toward him, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "I knew you'd come," she said matter-of-factly, as if reading his thoughts. Her voice was soft yet firm, carrying a weight that belied her age. Opening the box, she revealed its contents, a collection of dried herbs, powders, and tiny vials filled with liquids of various colors. Some looked like spices you'd find in any kitchen, others were unfamiliar, almost otherworldly. "What I offer isn't medicine," she explained, her tone measured. "It's faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your son, and faith in something bigger than both of us." She paused, studying his face intently. "But first you must trust me completely." Arjun swallowed hard. Trust didn't come easily to him anymore. Not after months of false promises from doctors, therapists, and alternative healers who claimed they could fix Rohan, but delivered nothing but disappointment. Yet there was something about this girl, something unshakable, that made him hesitate. Her words weren't empty or salesy, they felt genuine, almost sacred. "Tell me what to do," he finally said, surprising even himself. The moment the words left his lips, he felt a mix of relief and trepidation. Relief because he was finally taking action instead of drowning in helplessness. Trepidation because he had no idea where this path would lead. The girl nodded, satisfied. "Come tomorrow morning, bring your son and bring patience. Healing takes time." The following day, Arjun woke up earlier than usual. His heart raced as he prepared for the meeting. Rohan, sensing his father's nervous energy, asked what was going on. For once, Arjun decided to be honest. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said cautiously. "She says she can help you." Rohan raised an eyebrow. Skepticism etched across his face. "Help me? Papa, we've been through this already. No one can help me." "I know," Arjun replied gently, "but this is different. Just give it a chance, okay?" Reluctantly, Rohan agreed. Together they drove to the outskirts of the city where the girl had instructed them to meet her. When they arrived, she was waiting under the shade of a banyan tree, surrounded by baskets of fresh herbs and plants. Her simplicity struck Arjun, the way she sat cross-legged on the ground, her tattered clothes blending seamlessly with the earth around her. "This is Priya," Arjun introduced her, though she hadn't offered her name before. "She's going to guide us." Priya smiled warmly at Rohan, her expression kind but unwavering. "Hello, Rohan. I've heard a lot about you." Rohan frowned. "From whom?" "From your father," she said simply. Then turning to Arjun, she added, "And from the universe." Arjun shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. But Rohan seemed intrigued despite himself. There was something magnetic about Priya, something that drew people in without effort. Over the next hour, Priya explained her plan. She handed Arjun a list of instructions: how to prepare decoctions using the herbs she provided, when to administer them, and what foods Rohan should eat to support his recovery. She also insisted on accompanying them during physiotherapy sessions, promising to introduce exercises tailored specifically to Rohan's condition. At first, Rohan resisted. "Why are we listening to some random girl?" he muttered bitterly during their drive home. "What does she know about anything?" But Arjun refused to back down. "Because we've tried everything else and none of it worked," he replied firmly. "What do we have to lose?" To his surprise, Rohan didn't argue further. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the faintest glimmer of hope. Or maybe it was the sincerity in Priya's voice that had planted a seed in his mind. As the days turned into weeks, Priya became a regular visitor at Arjun's sprawling mansion. Each morning she arrived promptly, carrying bundles of herbs and a notebook filled with handwritten notes. Under her guidance, Arjun learned to grind the herbs into fine powders, boil them into teas, and mix them into pastes. It was tedious work, but he threw himself into it wholeheartedly, determined to leave no stone unturned. Meanwhile, Rohan began attending daily physiotherapy sessions with Priya. At first, he was resistant, complaining about the unconventional exercises she introduced. Instead of relying solely on machines and weights, she encouraged him to focus on breathing techniques, visualization exercises, and movements inspired by yoga and ancient practices. "Imagine your legs moving," she told him one day, placing her hands gently on his knees. "Feel the energy flowing through them. Believe that it's possible." Rohan rolled his eyes initially, dismissing her methods as nonsense. But over time, something shifted. Whether it was the calming rhythm of her instructions or the gentle persistence in her voice, he started to open up. For the first time in months, he found himself talking, not just about his frustrations, but about his dreams too. He shared stories of playing football with his friends, running barefoot on the beach, and scoring goals that left everyone cheering. Priya listened intently, nodding along as if every word mattered. Watching this transformation, Arjun couldn't help but marvel at Priya's effect on his son. Slowly but surely, Rohan's bitterness began to fade, replaced by a fragile spark of optimism. Even the physiotherapist noticed a change. "He's more engaged now," she remarked to Arjun. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Despite seeing progress, Arjun remained curious about Priya. One evening, as they sat together sipping tea, he asked, "How did you learn all this? These herbs, these techniques, they're not something everyone knows." Priya hesitated for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Then softly she began to speak. "My parents taught me," she said. "They were healers, practitioners of Ayurveda and other ancient arts. They believed in treating the body, mind, and spirit together." "And what happened to them?" Arjun pressed gently, sensing there was more to the story. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time her composure faltered. "They died in a fire when I was 8, she admitted quietly. "After that, I vowed to continue their work, to help others the way they helped me." Arjun felt a lump rise in his throat. Here was a girl who had endured unimaginable loss, yet chose to dedicate her life to serving others. He wanted to thank her, to shower her with gifts and gratitude, but she waved off every offer. "Helping people is its own reward," she said, simply. "Besides, I don't need money or luxuries. My place is here, among those who need me most." Her humility left Arjun speechless. In that moment, he realized that Priya wasn't just helping Rohan walk again. She was teaching them both the true meaning of resilience, compassion, and faith. As weeks turned into months, Priya's presence in Arjun and Rohan's lives became a steady constant. She wasn't just a guide anymore. She had woven herself into the fabric of their daily routines. Every morning, she arrived at their home, with her basket of herbs, her notebook scribbled with notes, and an unwavering determination that never wavered. Her methods might have seemed unconventional to outsiders, but for Arjun and Rohan, they were beginning to feel like the only path forward. Rohan's progress was slow, almost imperceptible at first. There were days when he felt nothing, no tingling in his toes, no flicker of movement in his legs. On those days, frustration bubbled to the surface and he would lash out. "This is useless," he'd shout, throwing aside the herbal teas or refusing to do the exercises Priya suggested. But Priya never lost her patience. Instead, she sat beside him, her voice calm and steady. "Frustration is part of healing," she told him one afternoon after a particularly tough session. "It means you care. It means you're fighting. And fighting is good." Her words struck a chord deep within Rohan. He realized that Priya wasn't just teaching him how to move his body again. She was teaching him how to fight for himself. Slowly, he began to trust her more, opening up about his fears and doubts in ways he hadn't with anyone else. For the first time since the accident, he started to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Arjun watched this transformation with a mix of awe and gratitude. The son who had once withdrawn into silence was now talking again, laughing, even. One evening, as Rohan recounted a dream he'd had about running on a beach, Arjun felt tears welling up in his eyes. It was a small moment, but it carried so much weight. Hope, which had been absent from their home for so long, was slowly creeping back in. But while Rohan's physical recovery was taking shape, Arjun found himself growing increasingly curious about Priya. Who was this girl? How did she possess such wisdom and compassion at such a young age? And why did she continue to dedicate herself to helping others without asking for anything in return? One day, unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Arjun approached her during one of their sessions. "Priya," he began hesitantly, "I need to ask you something." She looked up from her notebook, her expression open and inviting. "Go ahead. You've done so much for us, for my son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Why won't you let me repay you? I could give you a place to stay, send you to school, anything you want." Priya smiled softly, shaking her head. "You already repay me by trusting me," she replied. "And besides, I don't need those things. My life is here, among people who need help. That's where I belong." Her answer left Arjun speechless. Here was a girl who lived on the streets, surviving on scraps and donations, yet she spoke as if she had everything she needed. Her humility was humbling, and it made him reflect on his own life. Despite all his wealth and success, he often felt empty, burdened by guilt and regret. Priya, on the other hand, radiated contentment, a kind of peace that money couldn't buy. Determined to understand her better, Arjun decided to follow her one evening after their session ended. He told himself it was harmless, just a way to, satisfy his curiosity. As Priya walked away from their house, she didn't head toward the slums or crowded markets where beggars usually gathered. Instead, she took a winding route out of the city, eventually reaching a modest ashram nestled in the outskirts. From a distance, Arjun watched as Priya entered the compound. Peering through the gates, he saw rows of children sitting cross-legged, on mats, their faces eager and attentive. In the center stood an elderly monk, speaking softly while Priya moved among the kids, handing out bundles of herbs and offering guidance. Some of the children were missing limbs, others bore scars or bandages, yet there was a sense of joy and purpose in the air, a feeling that transcended their hardships. Arjun couldn't tear his eyes away. This was Priya's world, a world dedicated to healing, not just bodies, but souls. He realized then that what she offered Rohan wasn't just a chance to walk again. It was a reminder of resilience, of finding strength in vulnerability. The next day, unable to keep his discovery to himself, Arjun confronted Priya gently. "I followed you yesterday," he admitted. "I saw the ashram. Those children, are they your patients?" Priya nodded, her expression calm. "Yes. Many of them come from families who can't afford treatment. Some have conditions no hospital will touch. So we do what we can, with herbs, exercises, and faith." "And the monk?" Arjun asked. "Who is he?" "He's my teacher," she explained. After my parents died, he took me in and taught me everything I know. He says, healing isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about restoring balance, mind, body, spirit, all connected. Arjun listened intently, his respect for Priya deepening with every word. She wasn't just a healer, she was a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern suffering. Her knowledge wasn't something she hoarded for herself. It was a gift she shared freely, selflessly. Inspired by what he'd seen, Arjun tried once more to offer her something tangible. "Let me help you," he urged. "I can fund the ashram, bring in better resources, make sure those children get everything they need." But Priya shook her head firmly. "What we have is enough," she said. "More isn't always better. Trust me, sir. Sometimes simplicity works wonders." Though she refused his offers, Arjun couldn't shake off the desire to contribute in some way. Over the next few weeks, he began visiting the ashram secretly, bringing supplies and food under the cover of night. Each time he left before sunrise, ensuring Priya wouldn't catch him. It was his way of giving back, however small, to the girl who had given him so much. Meanwhile, Rohan continued to improve. Tiny movements returned. To his legs, first a twitch in his toes, then a slight bend in his knees. Encouraged by these signs, Priya intensified their routine, introducing new exercises designed to rebuild strength and coordination. She pushed Rohan hard, challenging him to push past his limits, but always with kindness and encouragement. One evening, as Rohan struggled to stand using crutches, Priya knelt beside him, holding his hand. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. "Don't give up now." Her words gave him the courage to try again. And though his legs trembled beneath him, he managed to take a single step. A shaky, uncertain step. But a step nonetheless. Tears streamed down both father and son's faces as they realized the enormity of what had just happened. That night, as they celebrated with a simple meal, Arjun turned to Priya. "How can we ever thank you?" he asked earnestly. Priya smiled, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "By never losing hope," she replied. "And by remembering that healing isn't just about walking again, it's about living again." Her words lingered in the air, a gentle reminder that their journey was far from over. But for the first time in years, Arjun and Rohan felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together. The weeks that followed Rohan's first shaky step were nothing short of transformative. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories, small triumphs that added up to something extraordinary. Priya remained the guiding force behind it all, her unwavering belief in Rohan's recovery becoming a source of strength, not just for him, but for Arjun as well. Every morning, Priya arrived at their home with her basket of herbs and her notebook, filled with meticulous notes. She had a way of making even the most mundane tasks feel meaningful. Whether it was grinding dried leaves into powder or boiling roots into tea, she approached everything with a sense of purpose. For Arjun, watching her work was like witnessing an artist create a masterpiece. Each movement deliberate, each decision rooted in years of wisdom, passed down through generations. One particular morning stood out. As Priya prepared a fresh batch of herbal decoction, Rohan sat nearby, observing her intently. "Do you ever get tired of doing this?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Priya paused, her hands stilling over the mortar and pestle. She looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Tired? Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I think about why I'm doing it, and that keeps me going." "Why are you doing it?" Rohan pressed. It was a question that had lingered in his mind for weeks now. Why would someone so young dedicate her life to helping strangers? What drove her to wake up every day and face a world that often ignored people like her? Priya smiled faintly, setting the mortar aside. "Because pain is everywhere," she said simply. "And if I can ease even a little bit of it, then my life has meaning. Your father once told me how much you loved football. Imagine losing that, not being able to run, jump, kick. How would you feel?" Rohan didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. The memory of those days before the accident, the freedom of running barefoot on the field, the thrill of scoring a goal, flashed before his eyes. It wasn't just about walking again. It was about reclaiming a part of himself he thought was lost forever. That's why I do what I do, Priya continued softly. To remind people that they're stronger than they think, that no matter how broken they feel, there's always a way forward. Her words resonated deeply with Rohan. For the first time, he understood that Priya wasn't just helping him heal physically. She was teaching him resilience. She believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself, and that made all the difference. As Rohan progressed, Priya introduced more advanced exercises into his routine. These weren't your typical physiotherapy drills. They were inspired by ancient practices, blending movement with mindfulness. One exercise involved visualizing energy flowing through his legs while focusing on his breath. Another required him to balance on one leg with support, while imagining himself standing tall and strong. At first, Rohan struggled. "This feels pointless," he muttered during one session, frustration bubbling over. "How is pretending going to help me walk?" Priya knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Pretending is powerful," she said firmly. "When you imagine yourself walking, your brain starts sending signals to your body. Those signals might be weak at first, but they grow stronger with practice. Trust me, it works." Reluctantly, Rohan gave it another try. This time, instead of doubting, he focused on her instructions. He closed his eyes, picturing himself standing upright, taking confident steps. To his surprise, he felt a faint tingling sensation in his toes, a spark of life he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few days, these sensations grew stronger. Tiny movements returned to his legs. First a twitch, then a slight bend at the knee. Encouraged by the progress, Priya pushed him harder, introducing exercises designed to build muscle strength and coordination. There were moments of frustration, times when Rohan wanted to give up, but Priya never let him quit. "You've come too far to stop now," she reminded him one afternoon after a particularly grueling session. "Remember, every step counts, even the ones that seem small." Her encouragement kept him going. Slowly but surely, Rohan began to regain control over his body. One evening, under Priya's watchful eye, he managed to take 3 full steps, using crutches. The effort left him exhausted, but the joy on his face was unmistakable. Arjun watched from the sidelines, tears streaming down his cheeks. For 2 long years, he'd carried the weight of guilt and helplessness. Now, seeing his son take those tentative steps toward independence, he felt a burden lift off his shoulders. He realized that Priya had given him more than hope. She had given him faith. Faith in the power of perseverance, faith in the human spirit, and faith in miracles that defy logic. Despite the progress, Arjun couldn't shake off the nagging curiosity about Priya's past. Who was she really? Where did she learn such profound wisdom? And why did she choose to live the way she did? One evening, after Rohan had gone to bed, Arjun decided to ask her directly. "Priya," he began hesitantly, "you've shared so much of yourself with us, but there's still so much we don't know about you. Can you tell me more about where you grew up? About your parents?" Priya hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. For a moment, Arjun feared he'd crossed a line, but then she sighed softly and began to speak. "My parents were healers," she said quietly. "They traveled from village to village, treating people who couldn't afford doctors. They believed in treating the whole person, not just the symptoms. When I was little, I used to follow them everywhere, watching how they worked. They taught me everything I know." "And what happened to them?" Arjun asked gently, sensing the heaviness in her voice. "They died in a fire," she replied, her tone steady but laced with sadness. "I was only 8. After that, I lived on the streets for a while, begging to survive. Then one day I met Guruji, the monk at the ashram. He took me in and continued my education. He says healing is a gift meant to be shared, not hoarded." Arjun listened in stunned silence. Here was a girl who had endured unimaginable loss yet chose to dedicate her life to serving others. Her story was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could still shine through. "I don't understand how you stay so strong," Arjun confessed. "If I were in your shoes, I don't know if I could keep going." Priya smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Strength isn't something you're born with," she said. "It's something you find when you have no other choice. My parents taught me that pain is temporary, but compassion lasts forever. As long as I can help someone else, their legacy lives on." Her words left Arjun speechless. In that moment, he realized that Priya wasn't just a healer. She was a beacon of hope, a living example of how kindness and selflessness could transform lives, including his own. By the end of the month, Rohan's progress became undeniable. He could now stand without assistance for brief periods and take several steps using crutches. His confidence soared, and with it, his determination to walk unaided. Every milestone was celebrated with quiet joy, no grand gestures, just heartfelt gratitude between father and son. Yet, amidst the celebrations, a bittersweet realization dawned on Arjun. Priya's work was nearing its end. Once Rohan regained full mobility, she would leave, returning to her life at the ashram. The thought filled him with both relief and sorrow. Relief because his son was healing, and sorrow because saying goodbye to Priya felt impossible. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Arjun voiced his thoughts aloud. "What happens after Rohan walks again?" he asked. "Will you disappear back into the crowd?" Priya chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Disappear? No. But my place is among those who need me most. Don't worry, I'll always be close by if you need me." Her reassurance brought some comfort, but Arjun knew things would never be the same once she left. Still, he resolved to make the most of the time they had left, to cherish every moment, with the girl who had changed their lives forever. Little did he know, Priya's journey with them was far from over. As the weeks turned into months, Rohan's progress became undeniable. His steps grew steadier, his legs stronger, and his confidence soared. Arjun watched with a mixture of pride and awe as his son transformed before his eyes. Not just physically, but emotionally too. The boy who had once withdrawn into silence was now laughing again, cracking jokes and dreaming out loud about playing football once more. It was as if Priya had not only healed Rohan's body but also reignited his spirit. But despite the joy swelling in their home, Arjun couldn't shake off the looming reality that Priya's time with them was limited. He knew she wouldn't stay forever. Her life was tied to the ashram and the countless others who depended on her kindness. Still, the thought of saying goodbye weighed heavily on him. How could he ever repay someone who had given them so much? One evening, after another successful physiotherapy session, Arjun decided it was time to confront his feelings. "Priya," he began hesitantly, "I've been thinking. When this is all over, when Rohan walks again, what will happen to you?" She looked up from tying her basket of herbs, her expression calm but thoughtful. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. I mean, Arjun paused, searching for the right words. "You've done so much for us, for Rohan. You've changed our lives completely. But I can't help wondering where you'll go next. What happens to you after this?" Priya smiled faintly, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "I'll go. Back to the ashram," she said simply. "There are always people who need help. My work never really ends." Her answer didn't surprise Arjun, but it left him feeling uneasy. "And that's it? Just like that? You'll leave?" She nodded. "Yes, that's how it works. I don't belong to one place or one person. I belong wherever I'm needed." Her words were noble, selfless even, but they stung nonetheless. Arjun wanted to argue, to convince her to stay longer, but deep down, he knew she was right. Priya wasn't meant to be tethered to one family or one story. She was a wandering healer, a guide for those lost in pain and despair. Her purpose was bigger than any single life, including theirs. Still, Arjun couldn't let go without understanding her fully. One afternoon, driven by curiosity and gratitude, he followed her to the ashram again. This time, instead of hiding in the shadows, he walked boldly through the gates, determined to see the world she called home. Inside, the scene unfolded like something out of a dream. Rows of children sat cross-legged on mats, their faces glowing, with hope despite their visible scars and injuries. Elderly monks moved among them, offering words of encouragement and guidance. In the center stood Priya, her presence commanding yet gentle as she demonstrated exercises and handed out herbal remedies. The air buzzed with energy, a mix of discipline and compassion that felt almost sacred. Arjun approached an elderly monk overseeing the group. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Can you tell me more about her? About Priya?" The monk smiled knowingly, nodding toward the young girl. "Ah, you've met our prodigy," he said warmly. "She's truly remarkable." "Remarkable doesn't even begin to describe her," Arjun replied earnestly. "How did she learn all this? Who taught her?" The monk gestured for Arjun to sit beside him, and together they watched Priya move gracefully between the children. Her parents were great healers, the monk explained. They practiced Ayurveda and other ancient arts, treating the poor and forgotten. When they passed away, she carried on their legacy. We took her in here, taught her what we knew, and nurtured her gift. "A gift?" Arjun echoed, his voice tinged with wonder. "Yes," the monk affirmed. "Some people have hands that mend, wounds, hearts that soothe pain, and minds that see beyond the surface. Priya possesses all three. She sees suffering differently, not as something to fear, but as an opportunity to heal." Arjun absorbed the monk's words, his admiration for Priya growing deeper with every passing second. Here was a girl who had endured unimaginable loss but chose to dedicate her life to easing the pain of others. Her strength wasn't born out of privilege or comfort. It came from resilience, from finding meaning in tragedy. Later that day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arjun found Priya sitting alone under a tree outside the ashram. She looked peaceful, her fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching her, marveling at the quiet power she exuded. "You followed me again," she said eventually, her tone teasing but warm. "I did," Arjun admitted, taking a seat beside her. "I wanted to understand you better, to know why you do what you do." Priya chuckled softly, shaking her head. "You already know why," she said. "Because I've seen suffering too. Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. But why you?" Arjun pressed gently. "Why does it have to be you who carries this burden?" "It's not a burden," she corrected him firmly. "It's a blessing. Every person I help reminds me of my parents. Every smile I see reminds me of why I'm still here. If I can ease even a fraction of someone else's pain, then my life has purpose." Her words struck a chord deep within Arjun. He realized then that Priya wasn't just healing bodies. She was healing souls, including his own. Her selflessness forced him to confront his own struggles, his guilt, and his fears. She showed him that true wealth wasn't measured in money or success, but in the ability to make a difference. The next morning, Arjun returned to the ashram with a plan. He brought supplies, fresh fruits, vegetables, blankets, and medical kits, enough to last weeks. He also carried a check made out to the ashram, though he knew Priya might refuse it outright. When she saw him unloading the goods, her eyes widened in surprise. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "It's for you," Arjun replied firmly. "For the ashram, for the children. Please, don't argue with me this time. Let me do something for you. For everything you've done. For us." Priya hesitated, her gaze flitting between the supplies and Arjun's determined face. Finally, she sighed and nodded reluctantly. "Thank you," she whispered. "But remember, giving isn't about repayment. It's about spreading kindness." "I know," Arjun said, smiling softly. "Consider this my way of paying it forward." Over the next few days, Arjun visited the ashram regularly, helping wherever he could. He assisted the monks in distributing food, played games with the children, and even learned how to prepare some of the herbal remedies Priya used. Each visit deepened his connection to the community, making him realize how much he had taken for granted in his privileged life. Meanwhile, Rohan continued to improve. One sunny afternoon, during a therapy session at home, he managed to take 10 full steps without crutches. The effort left him breathless, but the grin on his face said it all. "Did you see that, Papa?" he exclaimed, turning to Arjun. "I did it." Arjun hugged his son tightly, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I saw it, Beta, I saw it." Priya stood nearby, clapping quietly, her eyes shining with pride. "See?" she said softly. "I told you. You're stronger than you think." That night, as they celebrated Rohan's milestone with a simple dinner, Arjun raised a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and to the girl who taught us what it means to truly live." Priya blushed, shaking her head modestly. "It wasn't me," she insisted. "It was your strength, Rohan. I merely showed you the way." Her humility only made Arjun admire her more. He realized that Priya's greatest gift wasn't her knowledge or her skills. It was her ability to inspire others to believe in themselves. She had shown them that healing wasn't just about walking again. It was about finding courage, hope, and purpose in the face of adversity. As the evening drew to a close, Arjun pulled Priya aside. "There's something I want to give you," he said, handing her a small envelope. Inside was a letter, a heartfelt note expressing his gratitude and admiration. Priya read it silently, her lips trembling slightly as she reached the end. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This means more to me than anything else." Arjun smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, Priya. Thank you. For everything." Though neither of them spoke it aloud, they both knew the inevitable truth. Their time together was nearing its end. But even as goodbyes loomed on the horizon, Arjun felt a strange sense of peace. Priya had given them more than they could ever repay, a second chance at life, love, and hope. And so, as the sun rose the next morning, casting golden light over the city, Arjun prepared himself for the final chapter of their journey. Little did he know, Priya's parting gift would leave an impact far greater than he could have imagined. The day finally arrived when Rohan took his first unaided steps. It wasn't a dramatic moment filled with fanfare or applause. It was quiet, almost sacred. Arjun stood a few feet away, holding his breath as Rohan pushed himself upright using the edge of a chair. His legs trembled beneath him, but his determination burned brighter than ever. "I can do this," Rohan muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and then slowly let go of the chair. For a split second he wobbled, his arms flailing instinctively for balance, but instead of falling he found his footing. One step, then another, and another. Tears streamed down Arjun's face as he watched his son walk toward him, tentatively at first but with growing confidence. When Rohan reached him, he threw his arms around his father, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Priya stood nearby, her hands clasped together, a soft smile lighting up her face. She didn't rush to join them. She simply observed, content in knowing that her work here was done. Later that evening, after the initial euphoria had settled, Arjun called Priya aside. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given us back our lives." Priya shook her head gently. "Don't thank me," she replied. "Thank yourselves. Healing isn't something I did to Rohan. It's something he did for himself. I just showed him the way." Her humility only made Arjun admire her more. Still, he couldn't let her leave without expressing his gratitude in some tangible way. That night he handed her a sealed envelope containing a heartfelt letter. Inside he wrote, "Dear Priya, there aren't enough words to express what you mean to us. You didn't just heal Rohan's body. You healed our hearts. Thank you for reminding us that hope is real, that faith can move mountains, and that kindness has the power to change lives. Please continue to share your blessings with the world. Remember, true wealth lies not in riches, but in making a difference. When Priya read the letter, her eyes glistened with tears. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her satchel. "This means more to me than anything else," she whispered. "Thank you." A week later, Priya announced that it was time for her to return to the ashram. Though neither Arjun nor Rohan wanted to say goodbye, they understood that her journey was far from over. There were others who needed her, children with broken bodies and spirits waiting for someone to believe in them. On her last day, the family gathered outside their home to bid her farewell. Rohan, now walking confidently with the aid of a cane, hugged her tightly. "Will I ever see you again?" he asked, his voice tinged with sadness. Priya smiled warmly, ruffling his hair. "Of course," she said. "Whenever you need me, I'll be close by." Arjun stepped forward, extending his hand. Priya took it, but instead of shaking it, he pulled her into an embrace. "Take care of yourself," he said gruffly, trying to mask the lump in his throat. "And remember, you'll always have a home here if you ever need one." She nodded, her expression soft but resolute. "Thank you," she said simply. With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the bustling streets of Mumbai. Months passed and life began to settle into a new rhythm for Arjun and Rohan. The house felt quieter without Priya's presence, but her impact lingered in every corner. Rohan continued to regain strength, practicing the exercises she had taught him and dreaming of the day he could play football again. Arjun, inspired by her selflessness, founded a charitable foundation aimed at providing free holistic health care to underprivileged children. Every year on Rohan's birthday, they visited the ashram, leaving offerings of gratitude for the girl who had changed their lives forever. One afternoon, while overseeing a physiotherapy session at the foundation's clinic, Arjun noticed a young boy struggling to stand. The sight tugged at his heartstrings, reminding him of Rohan's early days. As he knelt beside the boy, encouraging him to try again, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "You're doing good work here," Priya said, stepping into view. Her clothes were still simple, her demeanor unchanged, but there was a new light in her eyes, a glow of pride. Arjun froze, disbelief washing over him. "Priya, what are you doing here?" She chuckled softly. "Checking on my favorite family," she teased, "and maybe seeing how your foundation is coming along." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Arjun pulled her into a tight hug, overwhelmed by emotions he hadn't expected to feel again. "We missed you," he admitted. "And I missed you too," she replied, her voice warm. "But look at all you've accomplished. You didn't just heal Rohan, you're healing others now. That's what matters." As they stood there, surrounded by children laughing and playing, Arjun realized that Priya's story was far from over. She may have left their home, but her legacy lived on, not just in Rohan's recovery, but in the countless lives touched by the ripple effect of her kindness. From that day forward, Priya became a regular visitor at the foundation, offering guidance and support whenever needed. Though she never stayed long, her presence reminded everyone of the power of compassion, resilience, and faith. And though she remained humble, refusing to take credit for anything, those who knew her understood the truth. Priya wasn't just a healer. She was a miracle worker in her own right. Her story spread like wildfire, whispered with awe across generations. People talked about the beggar girl who restored faith and mobility to a broken family. They spoke of her unwavering belief in humanity, her ability to see beauty in suffering, and her relentless drive to make the world a better place. But for Arjun and Rohan, Priya was more than a legend. She was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could shine through, if only we had the courage to believe.